Okay, so as you saw on the intro there, Jake Paul has branded Tommy Fury and Hassim Rahman Jr. basically a pair of cowards, hard to deal with, all that kind of good stuff. Chris Eubank Jr. has offered to step in next weekend to take on Jake Paul. Save the show if you like. Now, firstly, I'll be very, very impressed if Jake Paul accepted that offer. Very, very impressed. But unlikely that he's going to do that. Why? Because Jake Paul isn't stupid. Now, as much as Jake Paul is a 200-pound fighter, as in a cruiserweight, and Chris Eubank Jr. is a middleweight, 160 pound, sometimes 168, has been at super middleweight before, Jake Paul ain't stupid. He really ain't. Chris Eubank Jr. would play with him and knock him out. In fact, bantamweights, super bantamweights, featherweights, flyweights and whatever else, people like a Sonny Edwards and a Charlie Edwards and all these kind of guys would proper mess up Jake Paul, even though they're like half the size of Jake Paul. They'd mess him up, they would. And Jake Paul probably knows this. Jake Paul's a good businessman. He's a very, very smart guy. That's the impression I get from him. Him taking on a Tommy Fury, that's not something that's too concerning for him, because there's nothing really that Tommy Fury brings, is there? He's not a real fighter. He isn't. He's just a brother of a real fighter, as in Tyson Fury. Hassim Rahman Jr., listen, he's the son of Hassim Rahman, of course. For those of you who don't know, former world heavyweight champion, knocked out Lennox Lewis, and of course got brutally knocked out himself. But Hassim Rahman Jr. is not even close to where his father once was. And even so, Jake Paul fighting Hassim Rahman Jr. is a statement. That will be his first real boxer, okay? But Jake Paul knows, because obviously he's been in the ring with Hassim Rahman Jr. sparring, so he knows what it is that Hassim can bring and what he can't bring. So obviously he's going to feel quite confident in defeating him. But to accept a Chris Eubank Jr., no, that would be suicide. It would be suicide, of course it would. But if he accepted it, hey, listen, that's probably arguably the biggest fight that Jake Paul could possibly make outside of a Canelo or something like that at this stage right now with a week to go. I think that is an absolutely monster fight. And it's the kind of fight that, is it to Jake Paul, is he meant to be getting $6 million to take on Hassim Rahman? Well, he'd need a lot more to be fighting Chris Eubank Jr. I think Chris Eubank Jr. would proper mess him up. I really do. So, do I expect him to take it? Absolutely not. But again, it goes to show that Chris Eubank Jr., unfortunately, I don't like saying it because I've always been a big fan of his, isn't serious about becoming a world champion, isn't serious about fighting the top guys. That's why he's going after Conor Benn. That's why he's calling out Jake Paul and that. But, hey, listen, that's my thoughts on all of this. Of course, you drop me yours. Click thumbs up, subscribe, and I'll catch you on the next video.